Yeah, I had to end the lie so I didn't get banned, but we're back, we're back, we're back.
All right, all
So
right.
yeah, I was saying I believe that I just think an infinite amount of things existing
Mhm.
isn't that much of an issue for like a hypothesis. It might be like trivially
Mhm.
making it less likely for
Yeah,
the commitments, but if it's like let's say you have one commitment and it's just that
yeah.
there exists some infinite amount of things, that's one commitment leading to an infinite amount of actual things. But if you have an
Hmm.
infinite amount of structurally different commitments, that might be when it's getting bad. It's like there exists this type of
Yeah.
existence and that type of existence, blah blah blah,
Hmm.
etc., and so on and so forth.
Okay. Okay. So, why would we think that? Wait, do you think that then having an infinite amount of different governings of how reality would work would be all right?
Well, by the way, I'm not saying. I just want to clarify. I don't know if we are on the same page about this. In this naturalistic model, it's not
Yeah.
even saying there's different constants. It's saying that the constants, like just the standard for electromagnetism, weak
Oh,
nuclear
yeah.
force,
Okay.
strong nuclear force, and gravity. That's that. It's not saying there's different constants. It's just saying that
Just the values are
these
different.
constants varied. Like that's what it was talking
Oh,
about
okay.
the whole
Okay.
time.
So if we
Yeah.
say that the values vary, then okay. So let's
That
say,
seems to be like way more reasonable. Like it's sure it's slightly unparsimonious if there's an infinite amount of universe, but it's not like so severely so it's absurd and like the ontic parsimony way of like entirely different constants and an infinite amount of different constants. That would be
hmm.
like crazy.
Okay. So okay, yeah, but you'd still grant that under this model that the constants exist.
Yeah, the four constants exist. Yep.
So then, if the constants exist, um, reasons for differentials wouldn't that favor parsimony still?
Reasons for different. What do you mean differentials?
Yeah, like differentials and the constants, like the strengths
Yeah,
of
that's
them.
slightly less parsimonious. Yeah, I'm agreeing to that, but I don't think it severely is going to affect the hypothesis. It would just be like, it would be nice if there was a naturalistic explanation that could
Yeah.
explain the datum we see with just like not infinite space and not
Well,
infinite
wait.
variance. But even then, it's
Hmm.
not that big of a deal.
All right, I think I could maybe construct something. I'd probably say something like this. If they do still exist, right? Like if we grant that they exist, um, then them being one value wouldn't lead to, I guess, distinctions within the constant. We wouldn't have to grant that, okay, this distinction exists in this possible world, and this distinction also exists in this possible world. Because possible worlds, I mean, possible worlds usually model that which could possibly be, and like that's pretty simple. And so if there's
Hmm.
possible differences, that would lead to an increase in modal scopes, and then that's like modal
Wait, it
commitments.
wouldn't increase the modal scope because that's talking about nomological, metaphysical, and logical. You mean like the amount of
Oh
possible
my,
worlds we're quantifying over?
yeah, yeah,
Okay, that's okay. That makes more sense. I was like, we're not increasing modal scope here.
yeah.
It's all under nomological possibility.
Yeah. So then, if it's increasing, like I guess the modal worlds, or it's expanding, I guess, upon like, yeah, the possible modal worlds. I think that if it increases, like I guess, the worlds, like more possible worlds that we're quantifying over, then it would be less parsimonious because if we were to just simply pick out one of them, like seemingly if there's more, then we're gonna have a less likelihood of picking out the one that we're in.
Not. Are you saying that there's like some mechanism that selects for possible worlds that exist? Because I'm not. I don't.
Um,
I'm not sure. I would even. I'm like at all
maybe not like
interested in that. That seems
yeah,
unlikely. I'd say that
not
it's
not
entirely possible there's a logical modality and a metaphysical modality, but
yeah.
the only thing that like selects what exists is some nomological mechanism that brings
No,
things into
yeah.
existence.
No, yeah. I wasn't talking about like so selection in some like metaphysical sense, but that was just for the like to try to explain the inference. Like if there was a bigger scope, like basically if we increase the scope, then the probability drops. Because if there's a bigger scope, then the chance that we're in the select one then goes down because there's obviously other options that we could be in.
Are you just talking about possible worlds where it's not going to be in, or it is actually invariant and the universe is finite? Because then you could actually just
Yeah.
commit yourself entirely reasonably in saying that you're a hard determinist, which I'm not sure if you have an argument against that, and that whatever naturalistic mechanism selects for the world we're in, it just was going to be this type of world, and there wasn't a way for it to be different. Now,
What?
that's way more, let's say, a much stronger commitment in the counter model, but I'm not really sure it would affect it that much. And I wouldn't see how you're getting to theism from just
Okay.
we're hard
Yeah.
determinists and this is the only possible
Oh.
world that could eventually
Oh, I could do
happen.
that too. I think I can reason with that too. Okay, so if it wasn't just this naturalistic one that necessarily chooses it the way that we are, there's still meta modal claims or meta modal worlds there upon I guess why the selection process would choose this. Like, let's say there was a model by which it necessarily chose one that has, like, I don't know, like one less constant invariant, or like two less constant invariants, and yada yada. And then it also becomes extremely unlikely then. But if it was under a theistic worldview, then seemingly, if it was this, if it we bake into that the concept of God by which would favor life permitting, then the universes that lead to life being permitted would
For
already be
me,
more
man,
likely under the selection process.
if they're positing a disembodied mind to explain anything, man, that's going to be a big fucking fault in
I
the
know.
hypothesis.
It's because I think that the naturalism is infinitely as inflated, and that's why I'd probably say that theism is more likely then. But that
Well,
was the
I
whole.
don't think that this naturalistic model, or like any naturalistic model, is going to be infinitely more inflated. Again, if you mean like just things that exist, sure, but I don't even see why that couldn't also exist in a theist model. I'm talking about like types of existence and types of things that exist. That's when
I
it
mean,
gets to being like less parsimonious, but just
I don't
things
like.
existing.
Yeah, I see the distinctions in parsimony,
At
but
least
the reason why.
naturalism is going to predict the existence of a physical world. The theism doesn't predict the existence of anything physical.
I think that no, under the theistic worldview that I was invoking, it was baking into God that He's the assigner of properties to
Under a
universes.
theistic worldview, the only impediment is that God exists, right? There's no
Yeah,
reason under theism
God
why
is.
God would create
I
anything
know.
besides
God is by
himself, or
defining.
why he would create
I know.
anything that is
The, de-
natural.
the definition of God. The definition of God is that which, as again, I was about to say, which I defined as the arbiter of properties to a universe, and also signing that God has these life favoring tendencies. Those were the two added commitments that I did say I was committing myself to. And then under that
But
worldview,
that's
I was
going to
saying that
be a
that one should fail.
hypothesis involving theism plus other auxiliary hypotheses to make it
I
work
know. I
because
said that.
bare
I know.
theism
I said
doesn't
that.
predict anything natural
Yeah,
existence.
I know. That's why I said that it has these two added commitments. But I made an argument for, or I'm trying to make the
I
argument
mean,
for,
the
that the
model
naturalistic
that states
worldview
that
would.
only the natural world exists is going to entail the existence of, the natural world.
Dude, I understand. What I'm saying is that's still more inflated, as because when we look at the probability that we're in this naturalistic
That's
worldview,
not more
given the
inflated. How's the
constants.
more inflated, man?
Yeah, I was gonna tell you. Again, what I was about to say was because we have observed these constants are infinitely less probable under naturalism. And because we observe these constants and because we have them, that's how we know if we were to apply the naturalistic worldview and conditionalize it on the evidence, then we would know that we could come to the conclusion that naturalism is way less likely given our evidence because the constants being how they are and being in the Goldilocks zone is infinitely less
I wouldn't
probable than
agree with
it's
that,
now.
man. I could grant you, for the sake of argument, that fine tuning by itself raises the probability of theism. I'm willing to grant that for the sake of conversation. But if we take into account other relevant fucking facts, those lower the probability of theism like a
No,
motherfucker. Like, okay,
I can come to
I'll give you an example. Give me an example of a disembodied mind, because we have plenty of examples of embodied cognition besides you and me, of course. And you're positing a disembodied mind to explain design, to explain fine-tuned concepts.
Well,
okay.
there's a little issue with this, like, disembodied mind concept, because it's like, well, what are you like really talking about when you say disembodied
But
mind?
anyways, yeah, I don't know why everyone's jumping in
No, I
here.
just wanted to ask
Oh,
Toto.
I don't know
sticks
why
run up,
they do
electrons
like.
and love.
It feels like they do like doing that, but it's all right. I'm okay. Question. I'm just trying to inquire, so it's fine if people like want to add stuff because I'm just trying to think about it.
Hold on, can I
Fine.
wait, CJ? I want to ask you a question.
Yeah.
So, typically speaking, when people make harmony arguments, right? They say,
Yeah.
and fine tuning is like an example of a harmony argument. They'll point out something that they think is striking, and they'll say that the reason it is striking is because conceivably there's so many other like confirmations that this could exist, and it just seems so fortunate that the confirmation that is like a necessary precondition for our states of
Yes.
affairs. Okay, so let me ask you this: do you think that when you make this improbability argument,
Mhm.
don't you think you have like some burden to understand the statistical landscape of the improbability?
Like if you're trying
So
to, like are you trying to talk about like the SIA here?
no, I'm not talking about the. Well no, yeah, the anthropic reasoning is its own separate issue. I was going to bring that up earlier, but I don't think that's relevant. Let me ask you this: Imagine instead of talking about constants, let's just collapse all the constants down and just imagine that the world, as we know it, is completely contingent on whether a
Yeah.
coin lands on heads or tails.
Wait. You said it was like. I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I said imagine the existence of the world is contingent on a coin being flipped and it necessarily landing on heads or tails. And then a
Yeah.
philosopher looks at the coin and he says, well, hold on a second. The coin can also land on its edge. And there appear to be like an infinite number of conformations in between heads and tails that the coin can land on. So because it lands on two out of infinitely many conceivable orientations, God must exist. Do you think that is
Okay.
a rational line of argumentation?
I'd probably say no. I'd probably say no.
Okay, so when you say that it is improbable that the constants are the way that they are, you are
Hmm.
presupposing that there are no other constraints that force them to be what they are.
No,
Okay, because
I
you
do
don't have
think it.
epistemic access to this.
Wait, I did. I think hey, maybe I'm wrong, but hey,
Yo, I
this
feel
sounds good.
bad.
This sounds
CJ's
like a
just
good.
getting jumped.
It's okay, hey, dude. You don't get it. I'm completely fine. This is something like an argument I just kind of like was thinking about, and I'm just trying to get questioned. This sounds like a good objection, but so you said that I'm probably not taking into account these other constraining factors, then.
Yeah, like you don't know whether or not the constants are the way that they are because there exist other constraints that force them to be the way that they are,
Okay,
right?
yeah, I could say that. We could grant that, but that'd just be extra commitment still, would it not?
No, it's not extra commitments. It's just an epistemic gap. Like what it
Wait,
does is it just collapses your argument to a God of the gaps.
wait. I can go back to the coin analogy. Right?
Okay.
Given the inference of the rationale, let's try to say that okay, because two out of infinitely possible, but really it's constrained because obviously it's going to be more likely that the coin lands on one of its sides just based on like how it flips and how the coin's weighted, yada yada. But that takes into account in the analogy the preconceived factor that or it already takes into this preconceived factor that it's going to be more likely that the coin lands on heads or tails, and that's a commitment that's given in the analogy, but not in here. In this case.
I, well, no, I was just trying to make an analogy that we know that there exists some sets of constraints that force coins to land on heads or tails. And in the
Okay.
same sense, there may exist additional constraints that put the constants into the ranges that you described
Okay.
that
I don't.
requires no external agency.
I don't. I don't like how in the coin analogy it feels more intuitive because we have it set in that which is physical, and we can obviously have these physical constraints that, when then grounded, we could say, okay, yeah, based on how this coin works, it's going to be way likely that it's going to be landing on heads or tails, even though there's an infinite amount of possibilities there. But I don't see
Hey
why.
yo, can
But when
somebody
we're
give
talking
me
about
McChicken, bro?
strictly, when we're talking about strictly, in the like in the modality sense, where as what could happen is I guess like it's not constrained in that sense. Even if you try to say it's non-logically constrained, like you could say that okay, given X, um, there's still like what could happen is just anything within X, right? And there's no unless you think that this could be like probability working the same way how like we have weighted like coins or like how coins are weighted that will land on heads or tails. But when we're talking about like possibility, like I don't think that it would work the same way because it's not saying like given one fixed state of affairs, then yada yada. But it's saying like it's anything that could possibly happen. I don't know. I might be sounding confused. I guess I don't know how to put it. So maybe I'll just ask you a question like, do you think that what's a good question to ask then? Like, do you think that um that like any sort of added constrainment upon? Wait, I don't know. Actually, let me think, bro. That's a good objection. Let me think. I gotta realize how to put it.
Yo, CJ,
Yeah,
are you uploading this or can I upload this to Philbury?
Hey, you can upload it, bro. It's fine.
I'm gonna
I,
upload this to
I,
Philbury. This is
I,
like an okay debate.
I also want to point out that there's this thing with modality, right? When you ask the question, what is possible?
Yeah.
There's kind of two ways to test possibility. The kind of way where you look for like some logical contradiction, right?
Hmm.
And so when you say that something is possible because there's no contradiction, all you're really giving me is like an account of what you know, because you're just saying it's possible because I can't provide you a contradiction. But
Mhm.
just because you can't provide me one doesn't mean one exists, right? This is why I brought up the fact that there may be constraints you are unaware of that set these constants in the ranges that exist. Because the other way something is impossible is not through contradiction,
Wait,
but
no,
through a
wait, actually,
violation
wait,
of
actually,
structure and
wait,
constraint.
actually. All right, I see what you're saying, and I was kind of just trying to take in the intuition part. Yeah, I do think that there is one, and I think that's just what we call God. Anyway.
I
Yeah,
mean, if you're just gonna call if,
or
but the
maybe
thing
not.
is, that is
Well,
literally inseparable from what God of the gap says, right?
wait,
Is
wait,
that
wait.
anything you can't explain, you attribute to God.
No, wait. Well, I guess what I define God as is like the arbiter of, I guess, properties like to our universe, and that he'd favor God, and that I guess he'd have agency in the sense that he'd favor humans existing or humans having life as we have it, and then from that um get from that would be the explanation for why theism would favor naturalism. But under the naturalistic worldview, if we don't have basically okay, that makes sense. Because then under naturalistic worldview, even if we try to take it that he doesn't have agency and that he doesn't actually favor God, but it's just this other selection process by which the selection process could favor our constants, that could also vary, right? Like it could favor some other selection of constants that is not in the Goldilocks zone. It could favor, and that could be infinite in that sense. So when we
And
look at what could be constraining them, the theistic worldview seems more probable than the naturalistic.
and when you say what could be constraining them, are you just giving me a report of what you can and cannot conceive of, or what you can and cannot detect contradictions to?
Um, like, are you talking about like, wait, like what specifically that I said?
Like, how do you bridge what you can conceive with whether it is metaphysically possible?
Yeah, I guess I do constrain that to the logical, but hey,
Well, no,
even if we,
you're constraining it to your epistemology, not the logic, because you're saying I can't provide you. I don't know of a contradiction. I can't provide you one. So you are positing what is and isn't possible in the universe, and then concluding a necessary truth about the universe based on
okay,
what you
well,
know.
I can make the noism inference that I don't see any contradictions in the theistic worldview.
Yeah, but the
Ooh.
Nosium inference is no different. The Nosium inference just reports what you don't know, and
But
then makes a sweeping claim about
you
it.
can make a probability claim upon it though.
How can you give a probability claim
Yeah,
if you don't
like
know the statistical
Yeah, you don't know
yeah,
the
this is how the
probability
conversation
distribution,
started.
CJ.
Yeah,
wait,
you don't
what?
know the
I'm sorry.
probability distribution. But so
Hey,
remember the
I'm
coin
sorry, but like,
example. Like, you don't
yeah.
actually know the probability of a coin landing on its edge or any of the angles. So how can you make a probability claim without knowing the probability distribution of
What
all the
upon
conceivable possibilities?
wait, going back to the coin analogy, like, and you said saying I wouldn't be able to know the probability of like the edges. So then,
Yeah,
what judgment are you talking about? Like, what probability judgment are you talking about then?
yeah,
Like in the
for
analogy.
you to make a claim that make a claim that some set of affairs is improbable, you would
Yeah.
have to know the probability of that set of affairs in some landscape of other possibilities. So when I gave you the example of a coin, and
Uh-huh.
if somebody was to say the chances of getting heads or tails is improbable because there's an infinite many angles between heads and tails that the coin
Uh-huh.
could theoretically
Yeah.
somehow end up at, that's clearly a fallacious probability, right?
Wait, I did address that then. Under the theistic worldview, like I can give an example, I guess, in the coin analogy. Um, given by how we know how, like, let's say the coin works, the weight of the coin, like we can take it to the size and how we flip them, that we then know that is constrained in that sense that the edges are way going to be inherently way less probable than either of the two sides. We could call that, like, let's say, the theistic worldview, and then whereas a naturalistic worldview would try to say something like, no, it's not based on off of these, I guess, processes or these meta processes, but more so just upon, I guess, simply the bare, what do you call it? The bare, like, I guess, possibility there. Or you try to say something like, it's not based off, it's not based off these physical, I guess, governing laws then. But then we look at the evidence that the coin lands on heads and tails way more often than the sides. And that's basically like the inference that I'm making in my argument. Like, that's kind of the symmetry breaker.
Yeah, but the
Because
problem is your argument is not powered to make that inference, right? Because in order to make that inference, you require some type of permutations where you engage with the world, where you flip the coin and observe it landing on this side.
yeah,
Sorry, you had a huge
that's
echo.
permutation. That's the constant.
Yeah, so my question is, how do you know what relationship exists between the constants, right? Like, can you test the constraints that allow you to alter things like the cosmological constant or the ratio of gravity and the centrifugal force of spinning planets? Like all of these things that are required for life to exist. There's no, there's no testing their variations. It's not like you can flip coins or make your own planets, right? And your own gravities.
Wait,
So you're
hold on.
making an inference without knowing any of the statistical distribution.
What you're asking? Like, I probably wait. Actually, you just break that down just so we like for sure know what you're asking. A little bit.
I can't hear you. You sound really far away. Did you like
Oh,
move
I'm
some?
sorry. Wait, I'm sorry.
Y'all, I gotta end the
You,
live soon, so like we gotta wrap it up.
No
I
worries, guys. I gotta go pick up my daughter soon.
like. Would you
But
All
say
right.
that? Like, are you trying to say that because we can't test these constants existing or not, we won't be able to I guess like in the same way we can test a coin, we won't be able to know the probability.
yeah, so think about any statistical model, whether you want to talk about like Bayesian or frequentist or something. In order for you to update, so on the Bayesian, for you to update on like your beta pretend,
Wait, but
not
that's
beta,
wait. Does it wait?
you
Wait.
have, yeah,
Does that only?
go on.
I'm sorry. I did interrupt you. I'm sorry, but I was just rather say that well, wouldn't that only work if it's constrained? If it's upon the
What do you mean?
logical, if it's upon the logical, there wouldn't be that type of cross possible world analysis there.
No, what I'm saying is to know the variation that exists in a statistical landscape requires like multiple permutations. And what I mean by permutations is it requires you to test. So this would be a really long conversation. I don't know if question mark has the time, but depending on whether
I
you're
do
using
not
like
have the
Bayesian or,
time. I'm
or
ending in 1 minute.
yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So depending on whether I'm assuming you're using Bayesian inference, right? And
yeah,
so for Bayesian inference, you start with some spread, like some confidence that you have in some statistical distribution, and
hmm
then you update that confidence based on some
yeah,
permutations, some tests that you do. And so my
yeah,
question is, how are you updating that if the constants themselves is not something under your control? Because only an
yeah,
intervention allows you to check the effect of the intervention. How do you
yeah.
intervene with a constant?
I don't think that it's the same. I don't even think that's even the same relevant category there. Like I think that when you're talking about the coin, right, and we have these constants, and we can obviously we can map the probability that the coin will land on heads or tails, not only just because of the likelihood account, but also well how we even get the likelihood account is based off of these nomological constraints of the weight of the coin, of like I guess how you flip it and yada yada. And those constraints, like you could take those into account and then be able to calculate the probability just fine too that way. Because the likelihood comes from it being grounded in that in those physical constraints. But when we're talking about simply logical possibility, there isn't going to be these governing constraints upon the modal space at all.
All right. Sorry, guys. I didn't want to have to do that, but all right. Love y'all. We'll be live maybe again today. That was a good debate. This will be on Philbrary if everyone is like actually okay with that. So DM me if you don't want this on Philbrary. W everyone. Good live. Have a great night, y'all, or day, depending on what part.